بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. We continue reading from the 40 principles of religion, 40 Al-Arba'in في أصول الدين, and we have reached reciting the Quran, and this is the third reading from this principle, and the last thing we have read is the following paragraph. The third of the inner secrets is that in your contemplation you harvest the fruits of, here in English it says realization, really it's knowledge from its branches, and pick them from their proper places. Do not seek poison. We said that it's a wrong translation, really it's the antidote to poison. The taryaq is the medicine. From where you seek jewels, nor jewels from where you seek out scent and aloes. This is again a bit problematic. Each fruit has its branch and each jewel has its mine. Undermining this will be easy for you if you know the 10 categories into which we have divided the Quran, which are 10 mines. It's not mines, really, it's ma'adan. And I explained that it is not minerals per se, because the ma'dan is that which stays in the inside the earth for a long time. And the issue is here we talk about metaphorical language. So a character, to say that a specific character about a human being, it has to be there for a long time to say that it's ma'dan. الناس معادن الإنسان, the essence, but it has to be there for a long time. At any rate, so we will try to read about these 10 attributes, if you will, 10 states, 10 categories, whatever in the Quran relates to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his attributes and his actions. Acquire through it knowledge of his majesty and magnificence. Whatever leads to guidance toward the straight path, acquire through it knowledge of his mercy, clemency, and wisdom. Whatever leads to the destruction of enemies, acquire through it knowledge of his might, independence, overwhelming force, and absolute authority. Whatever leads to the states of the prophets, acquire through it knowledge of his gentleness, kindness, grace, and generosity. In this way, for every category, acquire through it whatever is appropriate to it, and do not look at it from a single perspective, something for which a full explanation here would be too long. The fourth of the inner secrets is that you free yourself from the barriers to understanding. These are the coverings that prevent deep understanding. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنَّا جَعَلْنَا فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ أَكِنَّةً أَن يَفْقَهُوهُ وَفِي آذَانِهِمْ وَقْرًا. We have placed coverings over their hearts so that they do not understand it, and in their ears deafness. Allah's Messenger ﷺ said, if it were not for the demons hovering over the hearts of the children of Adam, they would gaze upon the spiritual realms of heaven. Know that this hadith, Imam Al-Iraqi in his takhrij of the hadith Al-Ihya, he said that it was reported by Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal in his Musnad from the narration of Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. Know that the meaning of the Quran, or the meanings of the Quran, are from the overall spiritual realm, whereas its letters are only from the seen world. The coverings with which a God fearing person who is serious of the truth is tested are of two types: either something of the veil of doubt and denial, with which a person of weak faith is tested, or something of the veil of desires, which drown the heart with which a person absorbed in the world is tested. This is abundantly clear, and the fact that it is a block of to understanding the subtleties of the Quran, the subtleties of the Quran, and acquire something of its light is obvious. It's by these two types of covering that most creation is veiled. As for those devout worshippers who have removed themselves from the world to traverse the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, two other types of covering veil them. The first of them is the whisperings that divert the heart to over consideration of one's intention. How was it in the beginning? Has it remained up until now? Is it currently pure? This is this is if he were in prayer. All the whisperings that occur concerning obsession with correct pronunciation of letters, recurring doubt about them, and repeating them for this reason. This happens in prayer and otherwise. How can a heart tend towards studying the motion of the lips, tongue, and throat, and the way that air flows from between them, become aware of the secrets of the spiritual realm? This is the very meaning of over-articulating letters and constantly correcting their pronunciation. The second type is blindly following the apparent meanings of the Quran and being stuck on them, which is a huge veil to understanding. I do not mean by this false blind following, like the blind following of a heretic, rather true blind following also. The truth with which the creation has been charged with believing has various levels. It has an obvious starting point, which is like a ring, and it has an inner depth, which is like the core. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Verily, the Quran has an inner and outer, a limit and a place of ascent." Now, the hadith, this particular hadith. First of all, let's look at the exact wording. إن القرآن ظهرا وبطنا وحدا ومطلعا. Uh, the had in Islamic literature and in logic in literature about logic, the had is the definition really. So the that would probably rather than a limit, that will be wrong to say that it has a limit. Very, the Quran has an inner and outer. A limit? No, it's more of a definition. And like, what does it what constitutes really the Quran um, and a place of ascent. Okay, now definitely there are different layers, let's say, of understanding. That's for sure. Now the authentication, or basically the whether this is a hadith, most probably not. There isn't a chain of narrator that is not problematic, but it has been attributed to Al-Hasan al-Basri, and rather إن للقرآن لكل آية ظهرا وبطنا وحدا ومطلعا. But so it has been narrated, attributed to Al-Hasan al-Basri موقوفا ومرسلا. That's as far as one can mention. the authentication. But in anyone who really deals with the tafsir of the Quran, anyone who knows the Quran, anyone who knows Arabic, really, would know that there are different layers. Someone who is stuck on the apparent, who thinks that there is no higher level behind it that he can elevate to, how is it conceivable that its secrets will be revealed to him? For example, the creation has been charged with believing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be seen. Talk about uh, beatific vision, and Imam Ghazali explains further. For, however, vision has an obvious sense and a secret one. Whoever believes that the vision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is related to the vision that human beings now in this world is, or basically is related to the vision that human beings know in this world, how is it conceivable that he would be aware of the secret of of his words, subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because in the Quran it does say, "Lan tarani." Well, this is in the context of Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, "You will not see me," when he asked to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which would mean that in this world, in your state of being, you will not be able to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How would he understand that this is precluded in this world life with these eyes that are dependent on perceiving directions and locations? How would he understand his words, "La tudrikul absar," vision does not perceive him? Along with his words, "Wujuhu yawma idhan nadira," that day faces will be bright, looking at their Lord. إِلَى رَبِّهَا نَاظِرَةٌ. They should have continued the quotation from the Quran. This one example will suffice you, for we shall not reveal more than this to you. By writing these principles, we intend only to allude to the starting points of acquiring secrets and insights, or secret insights, in order to make those who are prepared for them desirous of them. The fifth of the inner secrets is that you are not limited to acquisition of the lights. Rather, you add to that the acquisition of states and effects. This means that you do not recite a verse without becoming described by its quality, such that you will have an understanding state and perception according to each verse. Thus, at the mention of mercy and the promise of forgiveness, you rejoice as if you will fly out of joy. At the mention of wrath and severity of punishment, you shrink as if you will die from anxiety. At the mention of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His names and His magnificence, you bow your head and feel diminished, as if beholding the majesty effaces you. At the mention of an unbeliever and the wife and child that he will lose, you turn your head and lower your voice, as if you are obliterated from shyness. Do like this for each of the 10 categories, for which a full explanation would also be too long. The effect of this should appear on your limbs, whether crying from sorrow, sweating from shyness, goosebumps appearing on the skin, shivering from awe and reverence, relaxation of the limbs, tongue, and voice from happiness, on their tightening from anxiety. If you do this, all of your parts share in obtaining a portion of the blessedness of the Quran, and the lights of the Quran will emanate over your three dimensions, by which I mean the spiritual dimension, the dimension of divine authority, and the seen world. Know that you are composed of these three dimensions, and that a part of each one is within you. Know that unadulterated lights of realization of knowledge emanate from the spiritual realm. It is the heart that causes them to emanate, because it is also from the spiritual realm. As for the effects of fear, dread, happiness, awe, and the remaining states, they descend from the dimension of divine authority. It is the chest, which is from the dimension of divine authority, that causes them to descend. This is another dimension of yours. We have labeled it the chest, just as we have labeled the face as the heart, because the dimension of divine authority is between the spiritual realm and the seen world, just like the chest is between the heart and the limbs. As for crying, groaning, goosebumps, and shivering, they descend from the seen world, and it is the limbs that cause them to descend, because they are from the seen world. I do not see that you understand from the heart anything other than the same way from flesh, and from the chest anything other than the ribs that surround the heart. Indeed, all that you understand of any given thing is its covering an outer layer. How far fetched it is that you would comprehend the realities. The outer is present for both the dead and the dumb beast, but the lights of realization and knowledge do not descend upon him, nor their effects, whether fear, awe, or happiness. So if you want to inhale something from the aroma of these secrets, and I do not see that you want to, and this is really uh, an amazing comment by Imam Al-Ghazali, that he does not really, uh, he sees that people are not really serious uh, about this. وما أراك تريد وما أراك تريد, because it's not, you have to strive. So if you want to inhale something from the aroma of these secrets, and I do not see that you want to, yet Satan has tied your neck with the ropes of desires, then you must take it upon yourself to read the chapter on divine oneness. It says here divine unity. Originally, the etymology of unity, it comes from one, uh, but since we speak as a construct in general, it does not fit the Islamic position, and as much as the use of oneness to refer to Tawheed, because unity uh, might presuppose multiple units, multiple parties, multiple, so divine unity for the three persons, as in Christian theology. So we talk about Tawheed from the first part of the Book of Reliance, from the revival of the Islamic sciences, religious sciences. Know that the Quran is like the sun. The emanation of the secrets of realization from it over the heart is like the emanation of the light of the sun over the earth. The spreading of the effects of fear, dread, awe, and the remaining states from it over the chest is like the spreading of the sun's heat into the earth as a consequence of its radiating light. Indeed, fear is an effect of the light of realization, and only the knowledgeable among his slaves truly fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The effects of fear and the remaining states bring forth movement and change. Whether crying, sweating, goosebumps, this is like the motion of the earth's parts caused by the rising steam, and gas when the temperature increases. Motion is thus a, is, Motion is thus a consequence of heat, and heat is a consequence of light, and light is a consequence of the earth facing the sun. This text in Arabic, he says كحركة أجزاء الأرض بتصاعد الأبخرة والأدخنة منها بتصعيد حرارة الشمس. فالحركة تبع الحرارة، والحرارة تبع النور، والنور تبع وقوع المحاذاة بين الأرض والشمس. I wonder whether Imam Ghazali is speaking about the earth's movement, but he speaks about the parts, which is still, he reflects basically the state of understanding during his time. For if we talk about the sun heating the gases, and this is really the smoke. Seeing that the smoke is rises, that's a different story. In English, it says steam and gas. Okay, I think what Imam Ghazali, when he spoke about أدخنة, أبخرة وأدخنة, he was in the plural. I think he was referring to smoke because that's exactly what's visible at the time. But again, it's not really, it's not a 100% scientific interpretation of the phenomenon of movement, let's say. Persevere in turning your heart in the direction of the sun of the Quran, and seek illumination from its lights in that way. If you are unable to do so, then as it is narrated of Musa alayhi salam, heed the call from the right side of the mountain. من جانب الطور الأيمن. If you find a fire, capture a flame from it and light a lamp. The language takes لعلي أتيكم منها بقبس. So that much is really Quranic. But that's exactly what Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam thought he would do. Apparently not, of course. He thought that he could bring some fire for his family to warm up. If you find a fire, capture a flame from it and light a lamp. If your oil nearly illumines, even without fire touching it. Now we go to a different story in the Quran, the language. يكاد زيته يضيء ولو لم تمسسه نار. He's referring to this. You will find guidance at the fire, and for you, as much as Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam. This is not about you become a prophet or a messenger, but think about it. This is what Imam Ghazali is saying. You will find guidance at the fire, and for you it stands in the sun's place, emanating radiance and light. So in this paragraph, when he says persevere in turning your heart in the direction of the sun of the Quran, if you do, I think in the example of the satellites, the what we call receptors, the popularly known as the dish you direct it um, in a specific direction to have the optimal signal. And it seems that this is exactly the same in this case. You just direct your heart. Uh, so if it's really in the direction of the Quran, it cannot be in the direction of something else, to put it mildly. And the moment we are distracted, then definitely we have tended to something else. Then our heart is not directed towards the Son of the Quran. There are so many things that go on in our lives, and one should have this resilience to persevere. Uh, and it's a challenge, but inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it easy for all of us. جزاكم الله خيرا. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.